This is my final presentation on the sociological understanding of inequality with a main focus on race. My name is Raegan Chase and I'm acting as the Special Mayoral Advisor on Sociology. So, introduction. Racial inequality can be better understood through the utilization and application of sociological concepts, more specifically racism, controlling images, segregation, prejudice, discrimination, and equality of opportunity. As Special Mayoral Advisor on Sociology, I've created this presentation in hopes of educating the mayor and the mayor's staff on how to better prevent such racial inequalities from occurring in our beloved home, Anytown. So what is sociology? Sociology is the study of human social life, groups, and society. The main concepts of sociology include social institutions, which are a complex group of interdependent positions that collectively perform some social role in society and reproduce themselves over time. Culture is the ideas, beliefs, values, and symbols of a society. Human interaction is the processes and manner in which social actors relate to each other. And finally, social structure is the enduring and patterned orderly relationships between institutions, interactions, and people, as well as other elements of a given society. So the sociological perspective refers to the basic insight of sociology, and this perspective supports the idea that human behavior is shaped by the collective groups to which we are part of, as well as the sociological interaction that takes place within such groups. It is helpful in understanding how society works because it allows one to understand that everything we do as humans has a meaning behind it, and that everything is social. Allows us to also apply theories regarding how society operates, including the explanations of social phenomena and experience, and overall provides an understanding for these situations of others and even relate to certain individuals who also identify with the same or similar group in society as ourselves. So the first sociological concept I'm going to be discussing is racism, which is the belief that members of separate races possess different and unequal traits. It can be divvied up into two different categories, such as old racism, which is the inequalities that were publicly voiced and acted upon a day-to-day basis, and just kind of seen as a norm within their society, which is an example of explicit bias. And then new racism is when such inequalities are still public notion, even though society may act as if these racial ideals are something in the past or a resolved issue, which is an example of implicit bias. And this sociological concept is important in understanding the source of racial inequality, that of being race. And it does so by seeing that members of one race are believing that they are superior to members of an opposing race. And this is a prime example of inequality, seeing as they are being treated as less than or overall in an unfair manner. So next is controlling images. And this is when images are designed to make racism, sexism, poverty, and other forms of social injustice appear to be natural, normal, and inevitable parts of everyday life. This sociological concept is important in understanding racial inequality because it unveils the innate racist ideals that are embedded in society, no matter how progressive the sources. And this is mainly seen throughout the media, seeing as they have the ability to take any event and twist the story into whichever narrative that they would like it to fit, which unfortunately reveals their prejudice towards certain races. And this image that I have on the right side of my screen is an example of controlling images because in both pictures, each individual is actually doing the same action. They're all wading through the water to obtain the items they found from the grocery store, but they were told from two very different perspectives based upon their race. One was described as a criminal, where the other was seen as a hero. The color of their skin dictated the way that society treated them, therefore showing the weight controlling images have on racial inequality. Next is segregation, and this is the racial separation that is not enforced by law. And this concept is important in understanding racial inequality because it displays the racial prejudices that are embedded throughout society, seeing that this is a humanities and cultural issue. No one of a higher power is making them separate themselves from other races. It is their own choice. This intentional separation of races is an example of racial inequality due to the fact that members of one race feel uncomfortable with the presence of opposing races being nearby, or because they feel as if they are superior to other races and that they don't deserve to share the same opportunities or experiences as them. Next is prejudice, which is the preconceived notions such as beliefs, attitudes, or opinions about members of another group. These are often judgments that are made without even meeting the particular individual. They are just grouping them all together. This concept is important in understanding racial inequality because it describes the biases societal groups have about particular races. Such negative judgments lead them to treating members of these races differently than they would a member of their own race, as well as in an unfair manner. And they can be viewed as less than, dangerous, or criminal based not on their actual actions or behavior, but just solely on their racial identity. Next is discrimination, which is a harmful or negative acts against people deemed inferior based on their social group. And this concept is important in understanding racial inequality because discrimination is a result of such inequities that are derived from differences in race. If harmful or negative acts are directed towards those of an opposing race because they are deemed inferior, then it is a prime example of inequality. It also aids in the understanding of where this discriminatory behavior originates from, based on one's upbringing in a particular area that promotes such behavior towards other races. It may be normal or embedded in their culture to treat certain races differently than others, which is also an example of innate racial inequality. Lastly is equality of opportunity, which is the fairness of processes through which individuals with different backgrounds or from different social groups reach particular outcomes such as educational or occupational goals. This concept is important in understanding racial inequality because a large percentage of POC don't have access to the same resources and therefore opportunities as others, whether this be due to a lack of education, social status, or racially motivated inequity. And some POC are unable to reach their full potential because of these unfair advantages and racial inequality in itself. Because society has a fixed outcome for those who come from less fortunate backgrounds. So essentially, their race has the power to dictate the type of occupation or education level they are able to obtain throughout their entire lifespan, which is also an unfair advantage. So a sociological study that I have on my screen is residential segregation, which is sorting population groups into various neighborhood contexts. And this map shows the growing amount of POC who are forced to live near toxic release facilities in LA County. And this is due to their financial situations where, unfortunately, this location is actually all that they can afford. But the amount of money one has shouldn't have the ability to jeopardize their own health of themselves or their family. Next is this graph, and this is showing the society's approval on interracial marriage through the years 1959 to 2013. And as recently as 2013, just 8 years ago, 13% of people still disapproved of interracial marriages. And they believe that members of the Black community are inferior to white people and therefore shouldn't be allowed to marry them. This is an example of new racism, seeing that although this may be publicly disapproved, these racial inequalities are still embedded into society, whether they decide to recognize it or not. Lastly, solutions to racial inequality is 1, ban the box, where many occupations require one to state their race or ethnicity on their job application, and an employer's prejudice towards a certain race may jeopardize their chances of getting the job, and this should not be a requirement, seeing that one's race doesn't matter in regards to how well they can complete the job. The employer should just make the decision solely based upon their skills and qualifications, not their race. And lastly, education. If POC are given the same resources and opportunities as others, then they will also have the ability to achieve a higher education, as well as an occupation that they want to have, not one that was chosen for them due to their racial identity. This would therefore reduce the racial inequality with this reduced unfair advantage. And here's the works cited page. I only used the week 8 lecture notes, which was the 8.1 racial inequality notes, and then there is the link to it. Thank you.